In the sagas of Norse mythology, few artifacts carry as much mystery and hidden power as Thor's hammer, Mjölnir. Forged by dwarves, feared by giants, and revered by gods, it is perhaps the most famous weapon in all of myth. But what many don't know is that Thor needed more than just Mjölnir to fight his endless battles. To unleash his full might, he wore a belt, a simple band at first glance, but one imbued with godlike strength. This was Megingjörð, the belt of power. In this story, we will unravel the origins of Megingjörð, its role in Thor's battles, and why the Norse believed even the strongest god required something more than raw strength to face the doom that awaited him. Thor was the god of thunder, the protector of mankind, the slayer of giants. His hammer was legendary, but even with it in hand, Thor was not invincible. The myths remind us that he, like all the gods, had limits. His battles against the giants of Jotunheim were endless. They were creatures of immense size and strength, sometimes as tall as mountains. No single god could hope to face them without aid. And so Thor relied not only on his hammer, but also on two other artifacts that defined his legend: Megingjörð, the belt of power, and his iron gloves, Jerngripur, which allowed him to wield Mjölnir without being consumed by its force. The name Megingjörð itself comes from Old Norse. Meging means power or strength, and Gjörð means belt. Quite literally, it was the power belt. According to the myths, when Thor fastened it around his waist, his already immense strength doubled. With every battle, every clash of thunder, every strike of Mjölnir, the belt amplified his divine might. But why did Thor need this belt at all? Wasn't he already the strongest of the gods? The answer lies in the nature of Norse mythology itself. Unlike the gods of other pantheons, the Norse deities were not invulnerable. They bled, they aged, and they could die. Their power was immense, but it was not infinite. Their strength had limits, and in Thor's case, those limits had to be pushed time and again. The belt symbolized the idea that even the mightiest protector required aid, that strength must be bolstered to match the challenges of fate. One of the most striking mentions of Megingjörð comes from the Prose Edda, written by Snorri Sturluson in the 13th century. In it, Snorri explains that Thor possessed three key treasures: Mjölnir, the hammer that could level mountains; the belt, which doubled his strength; and the iron gloves, without which he could not wield his weapon. Together, these items transformed Thor from a powerful god into an unstoppable force. It was only with these artifacts combined that he could fulfill his role as the eternal enemy of giants. Consider, for example, Thor's fishing trip with the giant Hymir, when he cast his line into the deep ocean and hooked the Midgard serpent Jörmungandr. Though most retellings focus on the hammer, the belt would have been just as essential in this battle. To drag a serpent that encircled the entire world toward the surface of the sea would have required unimaginable strength. With the belt of power tightening around him, Thor's might surged beyond its normal limits. Without Megingjörð, perhaps the serpent would have remained unchallenged until Ragnarok. There's also Thor's fateful confrontation with Hrungnir, the strongest of the stone giants. Hrungnir was no ordinary opponent. His head and heart were made of stone, his weapon a massive whetstone that no mortal or god could stand against. The two faced each other in a duel that shook the realms. Thor's hammer ultimately felled Hrungnir, but it was Megingjörð that allowed him to channel the strength necessary to survive the fight. Beyond specific battles, Megingjörð holds a deeper symbolism. In Norse culture, the belt was more than just a piece of clothing. It was often a symbol of readiness, of power, of authority. To gird one's waist was to prepare for war, to take on responsibility. Warriors wore belts to hold their weapons, to signify their role as defenders. For Thor, Megingjörð was more than a magical artifact. It was a sign that even the gods girded themselves for battle, acknowledging the weight of their duty. But the belt also represents limitation and dependency. The myths quietly remind us that Thor was not all-powerful by nature. He needed his artifacts, his gloves, his hammer, his belt, to live up to the image of the thunder god. This vulnerability was at the core of Norse mythology. The gods were destined to face Ragnarok, and no amount of preparation could prevent it. The belt of power was not a means of escaping fate, but of enduring it as long as possible. It's worth noting that Megingjörð is not described in much visual detail in the surviving myths. Unlike Mjölnir, which is depicted in countless forms, the belt remains somewhat mysterious. Was it adorned with runes? Did it shine with divine light? Or was it deceptively simple, a plain band that held unimaginable power? The lack of description invites imagination. Perhaps that is part of its allure, a reminder that true power is not always flashy, but lies in what it enables its bearer to do. In the end, Megingjörð's legacy is bound to Thor's destiny at Ragnarok. When the final battle comes, Thor will face Jormungandr one last time. With his hammer, his gloves, and his belt, he will summon every ounce of power to slay the world serpent. And though the serpent's venom will kill him moments later, the belt will have done its part, giving him the strength to fulfill his fate. Megingjörð is more than a mythological curiosity. It is a symbol of resilience, of preparation, of the idea that even the strongest must equip themselves for the battles ahead. It reminds us that power is not innate alone, but forged through what we choose to carry, what we bind ourselves with, and what we prepare to face. The Norse people, who lived in a harsh and unforgiving world, would have understood this lesson well. Strength was necessary, but so too was readiness. The belt of power was a reflection of their own lives, where survival often required more than natural ability. It required tools, weapons, allies, and an unbreakable will. So the next time you hear of Thor's mighty hammer, remember the belt that girded him. For Mjölnir may have been the weapon, but Megingjörð was the key that unlocked its true potential. Without it, the thunder god may never have been the unstoppable force we remember today. And perhaps, in a way, Megingjörð still speaks to us. We may not wear belts of magic, but we all carry things that strengthen us: knowledge, traditions, symbols of protection. The Norse myths remind us that even gods needed help, and so do we. If you enjoyed this journey into Norse mythology, remember, history isn't just in the past, it lives in the stories we choose to remember. Hit subscribe, share your favorite Norse artifact in the comments, and join us next time as we uncover more legends that shape the world.